Hello everybody, I'm Mango Thunderslice, and today we're going to be talking about the spiritual regeneration of America. And, it's the whole of planet Earth that's being spiritually revivified, but, I like the headline as it is. This is a video today basically about the dichotomy between materialism and spirituality on opposite hands, right? And to show that, the healthy philosophy, both internal and collective, right, personally and politically, really comes down to a balance, right? We have two hemispheres of our brains, right? We have the left and the right, and, if we only used one half of our brains, we would continually come to only half of the answer. And, if we only think in using one or the other side, for a long enough time, we might think, oh, this answer is the ultimate truth, because it satisfies the mode of thinking that we ourselves are locking ourselves into, right? So a person who is continually left brain locked, learns all about science, learns about how all these mathematical models and understandings of the world explain the material world. It gives them a explainable, predictable model of why things happen, at least for the most part. And to them, the things that it doesn't explain are so minor and meaningless that, basically to them it retains its spot as ultimate truth. Right? Then there's people who think only in the right side of the brain, right? And, logic and statistics and facts, they don't necessarily matter as much. It's really about the experience and the feeling and the perception, right? And, a scientific study isn't necessarily going to convince somebody whose prime means of experiencing life is entirely in the right brain. And neither of these are invalid, right, but they are complementary. I would argue that they are that theories that only rely on one or the other means of perception are invalid in the sense that they are not complete, right? A complete theory and understanding and perception of the world would necessarily take into effect the left brain and the right brain understanding of the world, right? And so, left brain thinking and science and materialism has led us very far, right? We've built rockets, we've got all these cars, we've got, electricity running, into our houses, we got these TVs and furniture, and, there's tractors building all these huge things, right? There's quite a world that we have built using materialism and science and left brain thinking, that we start to almost, it starts to become almost like a cult status, a religion status of people believing in science, right? Believing in technology, right? And, people, in the same way that they used to believe in God, right? Believe in nature, believe in the universe, right? Because prior to the advent of the Industrial Revolution, we see the power of, the world around us, right? The elements, fire, wind, water, earth, and basically the power of natural events. And that is the most impressive thing to people living in that time. Now we live in a world that's largely created and governed by the material creations that mankind has made. So it's very easy to believe that these creations of man have taken the place of the creations of God, right? That God doesn't exist, and spirit doesn't exist, and energy doesn't exist. There's just matter. When we die, we go in the ground, and there's nothing else. Food is basically just a matter of macronutrients, right? It's not about energy, and similarly with the way we think about medicine, right? Vaccines and antibiotics, right? Killing the bad pathogens, it's not very aligned with, energetic things like Eastern modalities of healing. Traditional Chinese medicine, Reiki, right, energy healing, these things are anathema to the left brain dominant person. They don't even believe that they're real, right? And a placebo effect is another thing. We see the placebo effect, which has on average an efficacy rate of 30%, which 30% is on par with a lot of efficacy rates of certain chemical medicines, right? So to the left brain dominant person, the placebo effect does not exist because it cannot exist because it's just energy, right? We don't believe that energy can be a prime substance. We only believe in materialism that matter can be a prime substance. So if it's not a drug, it literally by definition can't do anything, and therefore it doesn't. That's the mentality of the allopathic medicine. And beyond allopathic medicine, right, the left brain mentality, the scientism, the scientific cheerleader of science mentality believes that all the entire universe has been broken down into models, right? They believe that there's nothing left to explain, essentially. The mystery is gone. We have models for everything. There's no point in believing in anything like the ether or orgone energy or life force or life after death or a higher power, a God figure, right? Because we already explained everything. So why would you need those things? Again, is the attitude of the materialist. And, you know, it's funny because that is entirely an assumption. In no way, even conceivably, has science explained everything in the universe. To believe so is very much a dogmatic assumption. It is a religious belief to think that science has explained, or rather even can explain, every phenomena in the known universe, right? And to assume that relativity by Einstein and the various materialist theories that, you know, are in vogue today, to assume that that's the end-all be-all is beyond wrong. And, you know, I'm just going to use a quick little example here before I segue into essentially 8 aspects of materialism and spirituality, right? The dichotomy between them. 8 aspects of materialism and how they influence our culture today, and what the counterbalancing aspect of culture would be in a spiritual mindset, right? Again, putting things in balance, not saying it's one versus the other, right? So here basically is a model of, you know, the Earth rotating around the sun, right? And so the reason I bring this up, because this is just a perfect example of how the model of the universe, relativity, the end-all be-all according to the fanboys, you know, it's totally inadequate, and they don't even understand the basic tenets of their theory, and they don't they don't understand how anything could possibly violate it, right? So the speed of light, right, is supposed to be the universal constant, right? It takes about 500 seconds for light from the sun to get to the Earth and move across that 93 million miles of space, right? And so in this relativistic model, they assume that light is the ultimate speed limit, right? Nothing can go faster. So all forms of electromagnetic transmission governed by the speed of light, as well as gravity. This is what they say in their model, that gravity is like a particle, it's like a wave, and it moves at the speed of light. Supposedly that was proved by the LIGO gravitational, the Large Interferometer Gravity Observatory, whatever it was. And they, you know, I made a video about this 2 years ago making fun of it because people were freaking out. These Einsteinian fanboys, like, it was like the second coming of Christ to them, like, to see gravitational waves proved by LIGO. Gravitational waves were not proved by LIGO. Gravitational waves are entirely a fictional construct of their theory, right? But again, in this circular logic where they're looking for their own proofs and setting up the conditions by which their proofs are the only rational conclusion, right? It's not a genuine experiment, right? And so this is a perfect example of how their theory, it does not make sense, it can't make sense, but they won't acknowledge it. And the amount of mental gymnastics that these people go through to defend the theory against glaring, blatant, giant holes in the theory, this is a perfect example, right? So they say gravity moves no faster than the speed of light, so that Earth isn't just receiving light 8.5 minutes after the sun shines it, but actually the Earth is gravitating towards the point where the sun was 8.5 minutes ago, right? So the Earth is moving around the sun, all the planets are moving around the sun, but the sun itself is moving through space, it's moving through the galaxy, right? And so, you know, what's funny is observationally, we don't see that at all. We see the Earth moving towards where the sun actually is, even though we won't receive light from that point until 8.5 minutes from now. Earth is being pulled towards that spot where it is. So gravity is actually instantaneous, or at very least, extremely faster than light, right? If we're to assume that gravity moves, right, that it's a wave, then it is almost instantaneous, absolutely faster than light. And yet, you know, this again would be violating the laws of relativity, and it does, because relativity is not true, right? So Earth is actually being gravitated towards where the sun is, not where it was 8.5 minutes ago. So right there we have perfect concrete proof that the speed of light is not the ultimate speed limit in the universe, right? That the Earth and the sun are actually like entangled particles. So Entangled particles, another thing, basically more in quantum physics, that shows that, you entangle two particles together, and when you change one particle, even if they're miles and miles apart, it changes you change the rotation of one and it changes the rotation in the other instantaneously. It doesn't take the amount of time it takes light to go between those. It's instantaneous, right? So those particles are communicating, in a sense, through some medium instantaneously. And this is the same phenomenon that we see with the Earth and the Sun. This Earth is not receiving gravitational information at the speed of light. It is in an entrained field. It is entangled with the Sun. We can furthermore speculate, given this factual observation, right, which is not a theory. It's funny because the relativists, I was looking research on this, there's all these articles and people writing about the majesty of relativity and going through all these mental hoops to try and show that, oh yeah, Earth is gravitationally attracted to the Sun where it is now, but it's actually gravitating toward the Earth is 8.5 seconds ago, but measuring in where the Sun would go 8.5 minutes from now. And it's like the most convoluted anti-logic I've ever seen. And yet these are supposedly the smartest people in the country and the world today. It's nonsense, and they're putting this stuff out like they have the answer to everything, and that's why God and spirituality and energy doesn't exist. And they're putting out crap like this that makes zero sense. Actually, that's giving it credit. It makes anti-sense. It makes negative sense, right? So that's a perfect example. They will claim that they know everything in this universe, that it's all material, it's all governed by these laws, but their laws are blatantly broken all the time by the Earth every time it rotates around the Sun, right? So that's basically just a perfect little example of what we're talking about, that the materialists don't really have a grasp on things. They have a little bit of a grasp, but in no way do they have the chokehold on the universe that they think they do. And so this is a counterpoint. We'll clear this off real quick. Okay, and now we're going to go through 8 different aspects of materialism and how it influences our culture, and see some of the counterpoints of spiritual rebalancing of that aspect. Okay. So, number 1, scientism. Which basically comes down to relativity. And, I guess quantum mechanics goes in here, right? And in the quantum realm, they're searching for this God particle. They're searching for a particle that imparts mass, right? And doesn't make any sense at all. But that's, in compartmentalizing themselves ever more, right? They're constantly looking for this little puzzle piece to solve the whole thing, not taking a step back and noticing that the picture of the puzzle doesn't make any sense, and this entire puzzle has been put together incorrectly, right? Scientism and relativity, again, thinking that the universe is made up of all these relatively isolated frames of reference. There's nothing connecting them at all. They're all just experiencing the laws of physics, essentially. They're experiencing reality on their own terms, right? And there's nothing going on in between them. Again, enforcing this sense of separation, that we can't actually know anything because, it's all relative, right? And, it's just nonsense, because again, like we saw before, the Earth is gravitating towards where the Sun is, not where it was 8.5 minutes ago. So the Sun and the Earth are entangled, right? We can speculate that pretty much the rest of the universe is entangled, right? And that it's all communicating instantaneously. So that right in of itself destroys relativity, and, it proves that there's a greater field that's connecting things, right? And that is the opposite of scientism, is holism, which is a philosophical theory of unity, right? That things are all connected, right? So, and again, it's interesting how this all plays out, because, thinking relativism in the body, right, that, all these different systems in the body are relatively isolated and operating on their own terms. That's the way that, conventional medicine, they think of the body. It's all isolated parts, right? And so you've got a specialist to look at your elbow, right, and a specialist to look at your eyeball, and a specialist to look at your toenail, right? But there's very few people who are actually looking at the whole body as a structure of cells, right? So as far as philosophically, right, scientism versus holism, right, seeing the universe as disconnected parts, right, versus seeing it as a integrated whole, right? And that leads us into our second point of materialism, which is atheism, right? The belief that the laws of physics and the laws of random chance is basically all that is going on in the universe, right? And an atheist is different from an agnostic, and I've done videos about this back in 2016 too, but here we are revivifying the topic. An atheist is different than an agnostic, right? An agnostic is saying, I don't know. That's what that word means. Gnosis is knowing, agnostic is I don't know. I'm not willing to say one way or the other. An atheist is making a positive claim. And there are atheists that will disagree with me on this, but they're wrong, because the definition of the word is atheism, right? It is the postulate that there is no God. Theism, there's a God, there's a universal spirit that's organizing the events in the universe. Atheism, it does not exist. That's a positive claim, not a neutral claim, right? So atheism. And, there's no life after death, there's no spirit, right? All these stories of people, dying and coming back to life, right, on the operating table or whatnot. That's all a bunch of hokum, just some made up shit inside their brain, just some neurons firing that gave them some crazy thoughts, right? None of it's real. That's the, again, materialist point of view, that the brain exists, but consciousness does not. And, so when the brain dies, when the body dies, by definition, there is nothing after, because there's no material, right? That's what materialism says. But the opposite of that is a living universe, which could also be, typified as theism, right? That there is a God, there is a deity, there is a force or an intelligent consciousness that is structuring the events in the universe, right? And, I'm not a scripturally based person. I think people, they take literal scripture and then they say this is ridiculous and therefore God does not exist, right? So they take their interpretation of an ancient text and then they basically say this is categorically impossible given my interpretation. And they say, therefore, the Bible is a work of fiction and God does not exist. And that is a very restrictive way of looking at the issue that gives them the comfort of certainty, but it's, it's you can if I wrote a book, right, and you totally misconstrued everything that I said inside of it, used the wrong definitions of words, right, assumed that my rules of grammar meant something totally different than what they do, right, and then you said, well, this message that I extracted from the book doesn't make any sense, therefore the book is bullshit, right? You don't understand the book, you don't understand the grammar, you don't understand the meaning of the words. Maybe that's the reason you don't believe in the conclusion that the book is offering to you, right? So atheism versus a living universe, aka theism, right? And, believing that the universe is dead, believing that there is no consciousness that's observing all this, right, leads very easily into the next phase of atheism, which is Satanism. Right? And Satanism is the philosophy of the beast, right? Do you know the nature of the beast, right? And the beast, right, is the body. It's the animal, right? So the nature of the beast is the nature of the animalistic man. Satanism is a philosophy, right? There are Satanists light, right, who will say Satanism is a philosophy of personal empowerment, and it's just about empowering yourself, and, our ultimate role model is Lucifer, and rebelling against false authority and whatnot. And, I actually was very sympathetic to this mindset for many years when I was younger. And it's this mindset that led me into occult type fields of knowledge. And that eventually led me to, understand that there's a actual living force in the universe. This field is not empty and dead and neutral, but it's actually filled with life, filled with conscious charge and intent, right? And so there are Satanists that don't believe in Satan. They just believe in personal empowerment of the beast, which is the body, right? Because again, there's nothing outside the body because we're materialists, right? So it's very natural and logical to believe that the only conclusion is to better the self, better the body, better one's individual position, because that's all that exists, right? And that's Satanism. It gets really nasty and dark and dirty because people, when they don't believe that there is an observer, when they don't believe that they will be judged, when they don't believe that any of their actions have any consequence, it's very easy and rational to cause harm to other people, to steal from them, to hurt them, to kill them, to torture them even, if it brings you some sort of benefit, right? And so a Satanist, it's very easy for them to believe that they are performing righteous actions when they're causing terror and suffering to other beings because it's benefiting them, and that's all that matters. It's a materialist universe, right? So Satanism, and the opposite of Satanism is providence. Right? And that is the philosophy of spirit. So again, as opposed to, the philosophy of the beast, we have the philosophy of spirit and providence, right? Satanism is very much, no one's going to take care of you. There's nothing out there. There's no God. So you better get strong. You better get strong in yourself and build up yourself, right? That's the satanic philosophy. Providence believes you are not alone. You are being watched. You are being observed. Every action that you make is rippling throughout the universe, and people and God is watching, right? And that this universe responds in perfect proportion to your stimuli that you put out, right? So the belief that, the universe is taking care of you, that you are that there's a net waiting to catch you. And so, again, not to say that, Satanism is all false and providence is all true, but it's attitudes and how people interact with the universe. For a person who's experienced a lot of trauma in their formative years, right, it's very easy to be in a satanic philosophy, to believe that no one is there to take care of you, because to them, no one ever was, right? And why the critical importance of a healthy upbringing, of getting kids, of inculcating a sense that they are taken care of, letting them experience and go out on their own adventures, but, not traumatizing them and making them think that they're abandoned and no one's there and no one loves them, right? Because, it's equally valid to believe in providence as it is to believe in Satanism. And when you actually go out into the world, and the amount of times in my life when I thought, oh fuck, like everything, all is lost, it's all falling apart, I don't know what to do, this is shit, and I scream to the sky and throw up my hands. And you know what? Every single time I made it out of those situations. Every single time I found the solution. And every single time all I had to do before that happened was to take a breath and to realize, hey, the answer is right here. The answer is all around me. I just need to calm down and see it, right? And the more that I've trained myself to do that, to just take a breath and stay in that calm state of mind, the more that I don't even have the problems to begin with. I don't allow myself to get into that spot where I can't see the solution, right? Providence is real, and it's an aspect of the universe. Again, the solution is always around us. The problem, there's no such thing as problem, there's only situations, right? And that's the attitude of providence, right? Allopathic medicine is the next. So, in allopathic medicine, as we've been talking about a little bit, things like vaccines, things like surgery, things like radiation, things like antibiotics, right? Intervention in the body, right? Allopathic medicine is the neocons inside the body, right? Intervene and destroy the non-believers, destroy anything that's inconvenient in the body, right? Antibiotics, for example, kill, the bad pathogen. They also kill all the good probiotics in the body. It's just like a genocide, right? It just comes in and kills everything. And, again, antibiotics can be very useful, but when we take interventionist mentality as if it's the only one, people are prescribing antibiotics for viral cold infections or prescribing antibiotics for acne. I mean, it's ridiculous. And so they're causing genocides within the body and causing all these negative externalities, you know, basically, and then it's constantly trying to catch your own tail by catching up with all the consequences of your intervention, right? But in the absence of spirit, in the absence of God, in the absence of energy, right, allopathic medicine is all there is. Again, these people think of vaccines as if without vaccines, like we'd all be lost and we'd all be dead and we'd all have malaria. And, you know, it's again not to totally disregard vaccines as a modality, but to understand it in its proper place and understand that's not all there is, right? Because on the other side is homeopathy, an energy medicine. Right, and you know, again, the materialists, they don't believe in energy medicine. They don't believe in you know, anything that's not material, right? So, you know, and you know, I'll grant there are Reiki energy practitioners out there who I don't take with very much credibility either, right? You know, they say that they can feel the energy of the whole universe, and then they go to lunch and they have some like Taco Bell nacho cheese, like, you know, garbage, right? You know, and to me that's disingenuous. You either see energy, you feel energy, and you live your life in moving through those waves of energy, and you know, or you don't, right? And a person who does Reiki energy, right, and who doesn't eat healthy, energetic food is not really a practitioner in my mind, right? So allopathic medicine and homeopathy. Homeopathy is not a chemical means of healing, right? So they'll take a substance, right? So like something that you basically itching, you're itching, right? And they'll take something that makes you itch and they'll dissolve it in water, right? So many times to the point where there's no actual itchy substance in that water anymore, right? And they'll make a remedy out of that water. It's basically just water, but you give that water to a person and it will relieve the symptoms of itching, right? That's how homeopathy works, right? It literally means like heals like, right? Homeopathy and energy medicine have, you know, there's a reason that homeopathy is a multi-billion-dollar industry, and it's not just because of the placebo effect. It's because it actually works, right? For allergies, right? I have a lot of seasonal allergies. The chemical stuff does not work for me. It doesn't do anything. I'll be popping these pills and I'm just sneezing up a storm, sneezing my head off. I'll take some of the homeopathic stuff and it goes away. It's amazing. Like, and again, is this just because I believe in it so much? I mean, I'm willing to believe in the drug too. I just want the allergies to go away. But the chemical doesn't work for me, and the homeopathic does. So am I just crazy? Is it all placebo? I don't know. But for me and millions of other people, that's the reality. So, you know, either energy exists, and this is a rational phenomenon, or the materialists have it 100% correct, and I'm crazy, and millions of other people are crazy, and, you know, they shouldn't be spending money on homeopathy. But if it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. And, you know, the universe is ultimately discovered through experience, not through theory, and laying down one structure without actually opening one's eyes to the world, right? The next aspect of that comes to diet, and for materialists, this is carnism, or otherwise dead food, right? That it's all basically just protein and fats and carbs, right? And there's no energy to the food. There's just basically that chemical energy, right? And in that mentality, it's very easy to think of mankind as the top of the food chain, right? That basically we just get to eat anything we want. And again, that is technically true. We can kill any of the other animals on the planet, right? We technically, you know, can eat them as well, you know, and that's, again, not irrational, but it's also not complete. And the other aspect of that is veganism and living food. And I'm not 100% vegan at this point. You know, I eat probably a mostly vegan diet, but, you know, I have salmon every once in a while. I eat, you know, a little bit of chicken once in a while, but always it's high quality. It's always an animal that wasn't tortured, right? It's an animal that at least got to live its life. You know, and we, you know, when it comes to salmon, right, we try and just do the wild salmon. Obviously, it's more expensive, but it's definitely a higher quality than the farmed salmon being fed GMO corn out in the middle of the ocean in a big net, right? And with a free range chicken, right, living out on an actual pasture, it actually tastes better and it's healthier than a chicken that was in a slave farm, right, a factory farm. And to people who it's just material, right, it doesn't matter, right? Buy the cheapest eggs, buy the cheapest chicken, buy the cheapest burgers and frozen burgers and ground beef, right? Because there's no energy, so why even care? But what's interesting is people who believe that end up hundreds of pounds overweight with diabetes and heart problems and hypertension, right? And all these other issues, right? Because they're focusing only on the material and not on the spirit, right? But when we bring the living foods into our body, the living fruits and the living vegetables, right? And, we can clean our body out, right? Going back to the medicine aspect, the lymphatic system is the garbage collectors of the body, right? And if you are constantly bringing dead, inflammatory foods into the body, you're slowing things down, right? You're making everything just into this sludge, and your lymph can't actually remove that toxic, metabolic waste from the body, right? Just like we take trash out of our house, right? Your cells are expelling waste into the interstitial fluid, which is taken out by the lymph and excreted through the standard means of defecation, right? But, again, understanding that it's not all just about the macronutrients, it's about the energy, it's about the living force inside the food, right? And that brings us to our next one, which is nihilism, right? Which is a philosophy of the void, right? So basically this is very much the end result of materialism is nihilism, in that basically it's all matter, it's all random chance, there's no God, there's no overarching force, observing and determining things. We are just specks of meat suits in an infinite universe, and there's no meaning or purpose to any of it, right? And if all you're focused on is on the material existence, it's very easy to come to that conclusion of nihilism, right? And I would say that especially for some of the younger generations, nihilism is the default, right? And that's again why I'm trying to make these videos and show people that there's more to it than just basically eating chicken nuggets and watching porn and playing video games, that there's actually a great drama in this universe that you are partaking in, even if you don't believe in it. And the more that you can accept of that and consciously start to partake in it, the more that amazing things will happen that'll blow your mind and make you realize that this is the real video game right here. This is where the real stuff is happening, not on the screen, but in the actual game of life, right? So nihilism is the end result of materialism. On the other hand, we have sovereignty, which is a philosophy of free will, right? So, when you understand that you are a conscious being, that you are interacting with all of the rest of the networked entities and then all the other people, right? It's all the butterfly effect, that we are connected to everything. Again, it's holism. And that's within our sphere. On the micro scale, we're connected to all of ourselves. We are the God of ourselves, and we are the cells of the gods, right? And to see that interconnectedness, that fractal aspect, as above, so below, I have total autonomy within my sphere. Again, I am God of my cells. I get to determine everything that happens inside this realm. And when I see myself as in control of that little unit, I become a sovereign cell of the universe, of God, right? And I can go out and I can interact with people on that basis, knowing that I am filled with life and filled with meaning and filled with purpose. And it's not this great illusion, it's actually just my interaction with the great attractor field of the universe, right? And again, these are both rationally valid positions. Nihilism and sovereignty, again, is about attitude and balance, right? That not just seeing material, but feeling the meaning and the emotion and the aspect of it. It's not all just transient and, frou-frou and whatever. It's very, very real. And it's when you're in those very crisis situations, those extreme situations in life, that this is revealed to you. You are revealed to yourself, right? How you have sovereignty and you have free will. And when you abdicate that, when you say, oh, I'm just going to sit on the couch all day, yeah, it's nothing exists, I'm just a nihilist, might as well just sit here. You don't have to have any responsibility when you're a nihilist, right? When you believe in the void. But that's why people shy away from sovereignty and from spiritualities, because it entails responsibility. If it isn't all just meaningless, if you actually have a role to play, a part to play here, if you're not out doing that, you're actually doing wrong. You are wasting time, and you're wasting your purpose, right? There's something out there for you to be doing, right? You are here for a purpose, right? And to just believe, whatever, nihilism, you are giving up that responsibility. And you might feel a little lighter, as a result of giving that up, but also you have nothing to live for. And basically, it's, you lose out on all the rewards, right? Without the struggle, there is no reward. So if you are unwilling to engage in struggle because it's all meaningless, well, then guess what? You get no reward. And that's fair. That's a fair universe reacting to your attitude. Next is determinism. This is the second to last. So determinism, which is slavery. Right? That everything in the universe is governed by laws, right? Physical laws and, biochemical laws, and those laws were set up at the Big Bang, right? And we're just basically moving in this preset groove that was set up by those laws, right? And again, if all you see is material, and you're thinking in this line of material is all that exists, then it's very easy to see that it's all determined ahead of time, right? And that the best you can do is just become aware of your own slavery to your own physical nature. Again, enslaved to the beast, right? The nature of the beast is the nature of the person who thinks that they are just a physical body, right? And that is determinism. And that inevitably leads to a mental state of slavery, that we don't have the power to change our ways because we are slaves to matter, to materialism, right? And the opposite of that is, oh man, I totally switched these up. So nihilism and meaning was supposed to be the opposite of that, but I put sovereignty. But so we'll just we'll go with meaning right down here, right? And so yeah, meaning. So basically, nihilism is the philosophy of the void, and then meaning is the philosophy of the singularity. And it goes along with what I was just saying, that basically when you are the god of your cells and the cell of a god, right, you are the singularity. You are the fulcrum point where everything comes in and everything goes out. You're this node in a network, and you have total control over everything that passes through that singularity. Again, believing in the void or believing in the singularity, leading to meaninglessness in the void, or a life full of meaning in the singularity, right? Determinism, right? That we are enslaved to the laws of matter versus sovereignty. That we are sovereign over the laws of matter and that our spirit basically can transcend them. And that is free will, right? And it's a function of energy. To a person who eats dead food, who's all messed up because of allopathic medicine, right? Who's all, mentally jacked up because of atheism and scientism and Satanism, right? They have no energy. They're just sitting on that couch because they don't have the energy to get up and do something else, right? So then, basically they, assume that, they are slaves to their circumstance. Whereas a person who's eating living food, who has, gotten a massage and went through energy healing and is feeling amazing and their mind is pure and they feel the connection to the universe, right? They have lots of energy and they're going to get their ass up off that couch and go do something. Go to the farmer's market, get more food, right? Go on a run, get stronger, get healthier, breathe that oxygen, right? All these things are accruing from the energy that accrues from the attitude of spirituality, right? So nihilism versus meaning, right? Determinism versus sovereignty. And this leads us to the ultimate dichotomy here, which is death and life. And death is a philosophy of matter as prime versus life, which is a philosophy of consciousness as prime. Right? So that's basically what it's about. You know, it might seem a little dramatic, but that's literally what we're dealing with here, and why I felt compelled to make a video on this topic, because ultimately, if matter is primary, if we believe that all there is physical matter, and we're allowing ourselves to be governed by that mentality, we are in a cycle of death. We are in an attractor field of death, right? We are at very most seeking to stave off and prolong our death, but we're not focused on actually filling our life with that sense of meaning and force, right? That is what life is about, right? It's not just about prolonging death, right? Or, postponing death, rather. It's about filling ourselves with that life force, filling ourselves with meaning, with creation, so that by the time death actually comes, our life will continue to exist. People will remember us. People will continue to read the words that we've written. They'll continue to watch the videos that we've made, right? They'll remember us. Our family will remember us, right? A person who has had that philosophy brings new humans into this world and teaches them how to be humans and how to love life and to be curious and, to keep adventuring, right? Their life does not end because they had a spiritual existence, right? Whereas someone governed by material, right, they live their life in this, misanthropic, depressed, state where, humans are evil, we're overpopulated, the universe, there's no God, right? We're just specks of dust in the universe, right? Eating my chicken nuggets all day, my, shitty food, not cleaning out the body. Why lose weight? Why get fit? Because it's all just matter and it's all meaningless, right? They get to the end of their life, they have no kids, they've created nothing. The only things they've written are things about just how miserable they are and how there's no God and blah, blah, blah. Nothing that anybody's going to remember, right? And then they get to the end, and sure enough, they go in the ground, and that's all there is. But even then, in my attitude, their spirit still lives on. They just spent their whole life denying their spirit and denying their own life because of their own attitude. So again, the core point of the video is that our attitude in large part determines our results, right? And it's not just a materially determined universe. Even within this dichotomy, the way that we look at the world actually determines our result inside of it, right? So it's very important to me to, have a relationship with spirit. Again, I have a relationship with my material body, but I also have a relationship with the spirit that indwells that body, right? And again, this is the left and the right brain. When we bring these philosophies together into the pineal gland, into the singularity, we cease to just have observation of that realm, and all of a sudden we have command over that realm. That's where free will and the sovereignty really starts to take off and fly, because when you can both perceive the objective nature of the universe and your subjective perception of it, right, now you can bring those two closer and closer together. This is where psychic powers come from. This is where action at a distance via conscious intent comes from. This is where magic comes from. And this is what the Christians call the Holy Spirit. This is basically that consciousness that indwells all matter, right? And it is everywhere, and it's all connected. It's all instantaneous, just like the earth and the sun and entangled particles. And that is beautiful. That's amazing. For me, at that point, in cognizance and recognition of that fact, the person who's saying that the universe is dead and disconnected and meaningless, the burden of proof is on them to prove that, because as far as I can see, the universe is all connected instantaneously and alive and conscious, and that is constantly being proven to me over and over again the more that I accept it as valid, right? So that's my video today. I hope you guys enjoyed that. If you have any other comments about materialism and spirituality, definitely be curious to hear what you have to say. Again, this is not to put other people down. I've already done plenty of other videos talking shit to the atheists and the Einsteinian fanboys, and I'm always down for another round of that. But really, this is about attitude. It's about our meaning in life and how much enjoyment and purpose we get out of it. And I would like for everyone on this planet to have more meaning and enjoyment in their lives. And so that's what I hope the result of this video is, that you have more enjoyment and life and consciousness and free will and sovereignty in your own life. Hope you guys have a great day, and I will talk to you next time. Cheers.